Grand Risings, brothers and sisters. This is War Smith coming at you with the Black News Network. This is from the desk of the Emissary. We welcome you to the Black News Network. This is the real voice of Black USA. We're broadcasting about our business from a Black perspective. I do not own the rights to the music, but I do own the rights to what I say. We want to start out by saying this is has this has been just a trying time, knowing that this month we've just had the Martin Luther King March, the wreath laying ceremony, and other events that are sponsored for the Black community here in San Antonio, Texas. I want to say that it has been a beautiful weather for all these events. I want to thank God for the weather that He's provided us with to have these events. The march was a very beautiful march. Lots of people were there, and I would like to just thank all the people who took the time to go out and get involved in the Martin Luther King ceremonies. Our discussion today for the next 30 minutes or so is coming at you a little bit early from 6:15 till 6:45 for the most part. Maybe give a few, take a few. But first of all, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would like to ask you to go to YouTube, the Black News Network hyphen BNN, and subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking or liking on Facebook, just don't hesitate to like or subscribe or subscribe to either YouTube or Facebook. The reason being is it gives me an opportunity to know what type of subjects that you're interested in and what you may want to listen to. Because I want you to know that this information that I bring out on these Wednesdays and Sundays is about our people. And it's about educating those of us who may or may not know. Even if we know, it's good to get a refresher course every now and then on some of the things that we forget about and don't want to think about or talk about in our daily conversations with our peers. So I want to say thank you for coming to the Black News Network and seeking knowledge or giving me ideas about the things that we talk about. As you can see in the caption, we're going to talk about the SROs, the Security Resource Officers in our public schools today. And the Security Resource Officers are nothing more than another form of the police force, but they're placing these police in our elementary and high schools to police the students. Now, I realize that sometimes the students get out of hand and they get out of control, but for the most part, it's not necessarily a disciplinary issue. It could definitely and most likely be a mental issue. And if you think that you need to call the police on a high school student or an elementary school student, then you may not be in the right profession, because that is something that we have to learn to deal with, because it's a little bit more than what people are expecting when they bring in the police in an elementary school. That is something that we have to learn how to deal with, and without having to all the time call the police. Now, a little history is over 30,000 kids have been arrested in elementary school and high school in the state of South Carolina. Now, Boston, Massachusetts, and the state of Massachusetts is not far behind that, because they have some statistics that I'm going to show you later on during this show that are out of this world. I mean, black kids are disproportionately being arrested way more than anybody else. And that is the issue that we will discuss today. Because being a student in an elementary school and a high school is supposed to be a safe zone. But you and I know that kids nowadays are bringing guns to school, they're bringing knives. But why can't they stop these issues at the door instead of allowing the kids to start going to class and then the kid get into an altercation or a verbal altercation with the teacher, and the teacher feel like they get punked, so now they're going to call the police to get the upper hand on the student. So the police come in and tell the kid to do something, and the kid is defiant. In other words, there was this kid in South Carolina that all she wanted to do was to go see her counselor, and the teacher would not give her the opportunity to go. So rather than allow this kid to go see her counselor, he decided to call the SRO in. And as you know, it's always 99% of the time a white cop coming in to subdue a black student. And this black student, was a female, was basically slung to the floor out of her desk and handcuffed and taken out of that class. Now, that kid is not going to want to go back to that school because you know how rough kids are. They're going to harass her, they're going to ridicule her, and she's not going to be comfortable at that school ever again. And you know how social media is. Once that stuff gets out on social media, it's going to drive that child to become an introvert. And in many cases, it has caused that child to commit suicide. And all because the teacher was not empathetic towards the disciplinary behavior of that child. Now, you probably wonder why our children are the ones that are disproportionately attacked by the police all the time. You always want to blame the child, but it's bigger. It's the system. It's the system. It's the entire system of how America has educated our black children in school. And they have educated our children, black children, differently than they have everybody else. That includes the Mexicans, that includes the white kids, that includes the Oriental kids. So, in other words, if a black child does something, in most cases, it's considered disobedient, disrespectful, out of line with the law. So they call the law. If a white kid does something, oh, they must have had a rough night's sleep. They must have had some real family issues going on that caused them to act out in school. In other words, it's mental health issues when it comes to anybody other than black kids. Our kids are our future. And I just think that it is such a sad step for America to be putting the police in, in our public schools to start disciplining the children, more especially disciplining the black children. Now, we all know that our parents have so much that they have to do in order to meet these levels of representation that we have in the public. You know, we've become complacent with the way we have to operate. We get up in the morning, we know we go to work, we do that 9 to 5 and do some overtime, go home, kids eating ramen noodles. We don't have time for sit down dinners anymore. We don't have time for family discussions anymore. We don't take the time to listen to our children. Now they basically put the parents in a position where they don't have that time to do this quality um, focus on the family or the child while they are home, because they can't be home if they out hustling trying to make that money, trying to support their family and the lifestyle that they're trying to give to that family or that child. And they're trying to give that child the Jordans, the expensive sneakers, the expensive clothes, the look. They're trying to give them the appearance of wealth, which to me is a farce. It's wrong. You you teaching these children a fake life and how to become an existing body in a fake world. And that's what we are giving our children right now. And they have to live up to this image. You know, we've become complacent with this. We've also become comfortable with how public schools have dealt with our children. We don't know our school teachers. We don't know what class our child is in at 10 o'clock in the morning. We don't know what level of education they're receiving. We don't know if they are being tardy. We don't know, because the school has a responsibility to the parents to let them know, but they don't always let you know when your child has disciplinary issues in the school. And again, the peers of the children don't make it any better. They make it worse, because they are going to push your buttons as a child to the limits, and they're going to cause you to act out. And in many cases, it's bullying that can't be seen by the teachers, because the children are so damn smart now that they are not going to get in trouble ridiculing your child. They're going to wait till the teacher ain't looking, which, with the ratio of children to teachers right now, ain't no way a teacher going to be able to see everything going on in that classroom. They're not going to be able to keep up with it. It's too much bull crap going on in the classroom for the teacher to deal with each and every one of those students. So if you got it in a class, if your child, you should ask your child, how many kids are in your homeroom? How many kids are in your first period, second period, third period, fourth period, and on and on? How many kids are in that classroom? Because if that child tells you that there's more than 20 kids in that particular classroom, then you may start looking for another school, because that ratio is a guaranteed success rate for your child to fail. Because if that teacher's got to train more than 20 kids a period on this particular topic, then somebody gonna come up missing. Somebody gonna come up slipping. Somebody gonna come up without the information that they went there to get that day, because that teacher doesn't have time to finagle each and every one of those students in excess of 15 or 20. So a good ratio is probably 15 to 1. And then that teacher should have a substitute in the room with them. I mean, even in the hospital, the nurses in New York State, they went on strike in 2 hospital chains with over 7,000 nurses not going to work because they're upset about the ratio of patient to nurse. How can one nurse handle 20 patients? They can't. In San Antonio, the ratio that I know of, and I could be wrong, is 5 to 1. Hopefully it's lower than that. And if a nurse has to deal with more than 5 patients on an 8-hour shift, and that's constantly going in when they punch the button, constantly going in administering medication, constantly going in to make sure that patient is breathing properly, eating properly, sleeping properly, clean. It's a whole lot to deal with when you have a ratio of 5 to 1. So if a teacher got to deal with 20 plus to 1 on a daily basis, 5 days a week, some of those kids ain't getting a damn thing out of that class. So it's not necessarily the teacher, it's not necessarily the child, it's the system. And so what does a school system do to handle disruptive children in a classroom? Voila, they come up with this great idea. Let's put the police officers in the school and we'll call them SROs, security resource officers. And if a child gets out of line, we call the security resource officer to put that child back in line. And they're being called for the most minute detail to deal with a child. In other words, a child may want to put his head on the desk and go to sleep. And the teacher tell him to wake up and they refuse to wake up. What do? They call the resource officer. Rather than asking that child to step outside of the classroom and tell you what the problem is. That shows another level of concern about that child. But most cases, teachers ain't got time. They don't give a damn about why you ain't sleeping, why you sleeping in a classroom. They just know they don't want you sleeping in their classroom. So you either get the hell out of here or you comply. And if you don't comply, I'm calling the SRO on you, and the SRO gonna come in and you gonna either comply or go to jail. So many of these kids, over 30,000 kids in the state of South Carolina since 2020, have been arrested and brought up on charges through an SRO arrest, being a minor, getting handcuffs put on you. And that puts a stigmatism on a child to create a certain level of anger and resistance as that child grows up. And when that child grows up to be an adult and they've experienced that type of police brutality in an elementary school, then what do you think you're producing? First of all, you know you're making sure that child is no longer eligible to vote. So that child will never have a say-so in what type of government or governance will be implemented in that particular community. So that child becomes more and more insignificant to the growth of the city that they are in. In other words, pushing black people further and further back down in the ghetto. And I mean, how far you want to push black people to slavery? You want to push them to a position where they can't never make more than $15 an hour? You want to push them to a position where they can only get fast food service jobs, cleaning bedpan jobs? I mean, what do you want to do? Why do you do the kids like this in the beginning? You're priming our youth for failure in a society as an adult because you're starting out early. But that's not, like I say, it's not just the child, it's not the teacher, it's not the school, it's the entire system. And it's more likely starting at the city council level down to the parent teacher association level. I mean, parents got to go to work. They ain't got time to be going to school picking up their children every day. So what do? They send them to a special alternative school, which is designed to handle children with disciplinary issues. Now, most of those kids really don't have disciplinary issues. They just had an incident at a school that was not what the school system wanted to deal with anymore. So they sent them to an alternative school. Now you're going to alternative school, which you're not going to get any attention at all. You got little attention at a regular public school. And now when you get to that alternative school, you get no attention other than disciplinary attention. And that just makes you into a further criminal as an adult. We've gotten complacent, we've gotten comfortable, we've gotten established, we've gotten educated, and many of us have gotten rich. We've acquired homes, we've acquired nice cars, we've acquired properties, we've acquired businesses. I mean, we've acquired all of these things as a people, as black people. But yet we've neglected to pay attention to our most precious resource. And our most precious resource is our children in these schools. Our most precious resource are the children that we send to our schools every single day, Monday through Friday, and sometime on the weekend. Now, they have things to do at school, extracurricular activities like the band, the basketball team, the football team, volleyball team, wrestling, the debate club, all the scholar club. I mean, it's 101 different things that your children can get involved with at the school. But in order to get involved with these things, you have to have an interest. You have an interest in music to want to get in the band, an interest in debating if you want to be on the debate team, interest in basketball if you're playing ball. You have to have that interest. And if you're taking away all the opportunities for interest in any of those extracurricular activities, then you're basically creating a zombie who is going to exist in that community with nothing to offer that community after they finish high school. So what do you think they are going to do? They are going to do what they can do best. Hustle. We're creating a society that's really not going to be bad. And see, people in their 40s and 50s and 60s right now don't realize it, but they're setting themselves up for failure too, because these kids now that are coming through school that are not going to be properly educated, that's going to be pushed to the side, that's going to be disciplined by the police, that's going to be handcuffs and taken to jail. These are the very kids that'll be running through their neighborhoods when they are old and in dotage and unable to take care of themselves in a 50-year-old, 40-year-old way. So now you're going to have a fear of going to the grocery store because somebody may rob you in the parking lot. You're going to have a fear of going to Walmart because somebody may start shooting in the parking lot or inside the store. You're going to have a fear of participating in society, and you're going to start to go introvert yourself in life because you failed our generation that comes up behind us, because that's the generation that makes the community safe for us. And if we're not preparing them to make the community safe for us, then we are not going to get what we need out of life. Our life is just going to be wasted. Our older years is just going to be older years. You're not going to be able to do anything because if you go out, you're going to get robbed. You're going to get beat up by young folks because you didn't take the time to pay attention to the nurturing and development that these children need today. They need it today. They need us today, because if we don't give it to them today, they're going to give it to us 20 years from now. They're coming and they're learning the hard way, because the police have done the policing out in the streets with black people. You've seen it with Breonna Taylor. You've seen it with George Floyd. You've seen it with Rashad Brooks. You've seen it with Ahmaud Arbery. You've seen all the things that the police have done with black people in our communities. You've seen how they justice, how they put the law on people that are really not the problem, but they make them the problem. So it's imperative that we start to pay attention to what's happening in our elementary schools, because if we don't, we're going to pay the cost. All this complacency, this comfortability, this establishment, and this being established, being educated, being rich, being acquiring homes, land, monies, all kind of properties, businesses, all this stuff we can acquire at the neglect of paying attention to our youth and what they are not getting in our schools. So my thing is today is we got to pay more attention. We got to put the focus back on the children, because they're the ones who are going to keep us safe when we get old. And if we don't protect them now, they are not going to protect us when we get old. These SROs are doing some things in school that is disproportionately wrong when it comes to black people. Here's a chart to show you just how many people are being arrested in the Boston school district. If you look, you see African Americans, over 17,000 black kids were arrested in 2020 21 in Boston. 42% of the entire population. Now, if you look at 17, you look down at the white, you're going to see only 7,500 white opposed to 17,191 blacks. What about Asians? Asians and Hispanic, look, 22,000. 22,000 Hispanics. They're getting it worse than us. We're getting it bad, but they are getting it worse. So my point is, not only is it happening to black kids, it's happening to all kids. Well, mostly African American or black kids. It's always, we always in the top 2%, the top ones. Either the Hispanics are number one or the blacks are number one when it comes to disproportionate arrest or disproportionate treatment of law enforcement. It's always that way. And it's that way because black people in this day and time don't have time to pay attention to what's going on. And we don't want to get involved because we're really complacent. We're really comfortable. But you are now what you were then. You are now what you were then, back when your ancestors were brought here. You cannot be changed from what you were then to what you are now by man. Your genes, your ability, your skill set can be developed differently, but your inherent rights are still yours, and they're there. And if you don't do anything with them, then it ain't nobody's fault but your own. So all I'm saying is, black people, please step up to the plate and start saying something. If you see something, say something. If you see something, do something. A video ain't always going to be your saving grace. Don't always think that that's what you need to do when you see something going wrong. It's a time and a place for everything, and many times a video don't do nothing but document. It don't change a thing. It just document. There's too much policing in the last frontier, which is our education system. It's a lot of policing in that frontier. And it's our most precious resources being chastised and criminalized in these schools. It's very hard to really discuss what is going on in our schools right now, because it's never going to get better. unless we take an active role in making the change. San Antonio Police Department has come up with a new program. It's called the Lights Out program. So if you get pulled over and you have a light out on your car, rather than them writing you a ticket, they should give you a voucher up to $250 to go and have that light fixed. It's called the Lights Out program, and it's coming your way in Bexar County, and more especially the city of San Antonio. So pay attention to what's happening with our youth and stop the police from doubling down on black kids in elementary school, because that's what they're doing. They beat us up in the streets, and now they're going into the schools and they're beating us up in the schools too. So sooner or later, we got to step up and we got to say these 30,000 kids in South Carolina since the year 2000 is just too many to be going to jail and be brought up on cases. You know, we got to do better. Just because they don't want to show us and teach us our own history and make sure we know our own history, it's not that we don't need to know it. We still need to know it. And in order, if they don't want to teach us in school, then we have to teach ourselves. Make sure your children know your history. Make sure they know who Harriet Tubman is. Make sure they know who Medgar Evers is. Make sure they know who Malcolm X is. And I can say was, but I'm not going to say that. Make sure they know who Martin Luther King is. I've heard people butcher his name and say other things, but these are our ancestors, and these are the people who represented our communities, and they tried their best to make things better for us. It's up to us to come up with new leaders and put our new leaders out there to do something for black people in the United States of America. This is the Black News Network, the real voice of Black City America, bringing you the news from a black business perspective. I do not own the rights to the music, but I do own the rights to what I say. And I want to ask you to please subscribe to the Black News Network -BNN on YouTube, and to please like us on Facebook and leave a comment as well. See you on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. for another broadcast of the Black News Network. In the meantime, study this chart while we sign off. Thank you for listening.